All right. Welcome to another episode of The Close Up. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, part of the Orlando Magic HQ Network. What's going on, Magic fans? Psyched to have another episode for you guys this week. It's a fun one. We got my good friend Luke Smith, who is quite a good basketball fan, man. He is deep in Australian basketball, but he's also a diehard Orlando Magic fan. He is a head coach in the Junior Victoria Basketball League, which is one of the developmental leagues that go up to the NBL. And then he is also the vice president of a nonprofit organization called Helping Hoops, which is one of the Patty Mills organization that's all about getting more access to basketball to the local indigenous people of Australia. So he's really embedded into basketball and the basketball community. And we have a really good conversation. We talk a lot about the offseason moves for the Magic, kind of being separated from from these moves a few weeks into it now. We talk about the draft with Tristian Da Silva and Summer League with the younger guys like Jett Howard and Anthony Black. We talk about obviously bringing on Caldwell-Pope. We hit on the impact of losing Joe Ingles and how that may or may not affect the Magic, but also recognize what he did for the Magic last year, which is really cool. We touch on a bunch of stuff. We touch on Markelle Fultz leaving. We touch on how Franz, his experience with Germany in the Olympics will impact his play over here in the Magic next year. We hit on a lot. It's a big episode, so I don't want to take up too much of your time leading up to it. So let's just get to the housekeeping, and then we'll get straight to the conversation with Luke Smith. First, we'd love for you guys to like and subscribe to this episode, whether you're listening to it on a podcast platform or watching it on YouTube. If you could just hit the like and subscribe button, that would be awesome. If you have a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, all that stuff is a really big help to us in the algorithm, so we really appreciate it. Second, this podcast is brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive 50% free bet on up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing and more. It's quite insane how many different things you can bet on, even during the slow season of sports right now, leading into when we hit the mecca with basketball, football, baseball, all going on at the same time, hockey. It's pretty awesome. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And their platforms are really easy to see all these things on, whether you're on the website or on their mobile apps. I've used it. It's really straightforward how you can place these bets. When the game's over, head over to one of the online casinos they have, get in on the game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with over 150 different slot games that they have. There's countless ways of entertainment. Head over to the website today and get in on the action. Use promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. And on a personal note, please gamble responsibly. You heard the promo code BLEAV, BLEAV. Believe Network, Podcast Network is the network we are a part of over at Orlando Magic HQ. We love them. We support them. Check out their content. It's pretty awesome. That's it, people. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Luke, and we'll see you on the next episode. Enjoy the show.
All right, everyone. Like I said in the intro, we got my man Luke Smith with us back again. If you've been listening to me for a while, you've heard Luke on and off for many, many years. He did join us last season for an episode, and he is back again this offseason. And we got a lot of really fun things to talk about today. Luke, you are a man of many talents. We will get to all those in a moment, but how are you doing today, sir?
Good, thanks, man. I've just got my little puppy that is learning how to exist when I'm doing something else with me. For our listeners, his name is Iverson. We don't need to explain where that's from. I am a Magic fan through and through, you know that, but Allen Iverson for me was, like a huge thing for me growing up, and outside of Jordan, my favorite player of all time, probably just before Penny, I would say. I'm good, man. I'm really, really good. Middle of the day in Australia. We've got a lot going on. Great off season for Orlando, in my opinion, and yeah, excited to chat about it, dude.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Listeners, we were recording this on July 29th for the people in the U.S. Luke is in the future. He is on the 30th. So if you want to know what it's like to be in the future, just give Luke a call. He'll help you out there. Luke, let's remind the listeners of kind of like your background in basketball. You have explained it a few times on the show, but let's give them a refresher. You are a man of many talents over in Australia. You've even come over to North America, worked in basketball in Toronto for a while, but right now you're back in Australia. You are the coach of the Victorian junior basketball team, and you are also the VP of Helping Hoops, which is a nonprofit. Before we get to the nonprofit and what you're doing with them, tell us a little bit about your league, your team. How you guys doing?
So I will correct you on one thing. I wish I was the coach of the Victorian basketball team, the state youth team, but I coach in the Victorian Junior Basketball League, which is like
Junior Basketball League.
Yeah,
my bad.
So in Australia, Victoria is kind of the basketball state. They dominate most youth competition, and the representative kind of high-level youth age comp here is the VJBL. I coach in that. I coach at Darebin Basketball Association. Our team is Darebin Phoenix. I coach an under-14s team. We are doing okay in our division this year. It's coming up. We've got about 3 games of the season left. I think we need to win all of them. And it's my first year head coaching on the rep side. I did assistant coach on the rep side when I was living in Toronto with Northern Kings. They're actually, for anyone playing at home, they're the club that O'Shea Brissett and Zach Eady both come from. They played representative basketball for the Northern Kings in Toronto. But yeah, a lot of youth basketball coaching is kind of where I'm at. I'm on the non-profit board as a vice president with Helping Hoops, as well as, so Darebin are involved with a little bit of stuff around Indigenous Basketball Australia, which is one of Paddy Mills's kind of philanthropic ventures that he does, and we help out facilitating, leagues for like Indigenous and Aboriginal kids in Australia as well. And been a Magic fan since I was a kid. I've known you since like 2019. Still work full-time in an office job, but the life outside of that is very heavily basketball and coaching and community work through coaching.
Man, it sounds like every time we talk and catch up, you've like added something new to what you're doing within basketball, or like just getting more involved in one way or another. And this time you went from assistant coach to coach of your team, and that's pretty awesome. And I don't know if you had the VP title last time we had a conversation on a podcast. So I like to see you growing, dude.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
Crushing it, man. Well, dude, let's get into some Magic basketball. For the listeners, we're gonna talk about some Magic basketball. Then we're gonna talk about some Olympic stuff. It's all connected. It's all basketball. It's all good fun. The Magic, Luke, had a really active offseason, and I haven't really talked about it too much on this show. I did talk a little bit to Steve Cerruti on some basketball stuff, but that was kind of like before the draft, before we signed no, we did actually draft. I think we did sign KCP at the time. I can't remember. Yeah. And then my last episode, I had Arnie Kander on, the VP of Player Performance. So I haven't actually talked about the offseason too much yet and what happened to the team structure and things like that. And we did a lot. And I think we should just start at the beginning. The first thing that happened this offseason was the draft. And they drafted Tristian Da Silva with the 18th pick. And then they traded away their second round pick, which was kind of expected for us. So just thinking back, what were your thoughts during draft day and how we came out with Tristian Da Silva?
So the thing about the Orlando Magic right now is we're good. So was I less invested in the draft? Yes. As always, I think my routine. Like if we've got a high pick, I try to get pretty clued in. I try to have some preferences. And usually, though, I'm kind of keeping an eye on the Australian kids, on the kids who are, coming from the NBL and stuff, and just those kind of. And funnily enough, Alexandre Sarr played in the NBL, so he was the number 1 pick. He came from the Perth Wildcats, the French kid, and the Pacers picked a kid from Australia, Johnny Furphy. I knew nothing about Tristian Da Silva. Straight away, I noticed he was German. His older brother, longtime member of their national team, so I knew Franz and Mo would be probably familiar with the family. Given the age gap, I'm sure they know each other. I'm sure perhaps Franz and him were maybe around some developmental stuff and some camps over there on the elite side for the better younger players. I'm really stoked with the pick because he is what we need. He's just simply a basketball player. Like, he is just simply a basketball player, and he can shoot threes. Like, I know that sounds really reductive on, like, what we need right now. You know, should I be going through offensive creation? Should I be going through defensive upside? But I just feel like a guy who looks like they've got a bit of a cerebral feel for the game, can shoot, can defend a little bit. He seems to have a pretty okay physical profile. At 18, that's great. You know what I mean? Like, if we went back through the last 20 years of 18th picks, I'm sure the majority of them may not even still be in the NBA because people seem to forget that drop-off happens a bit quicker than you might assume. If you go through a full 60 picks every year, like, it's not just 60 new players in the NBA every year. It's actually way less. So I think he is going to work out to be a great pickup. He seems really happy with it. Like, I think that familiarity with some German guys is helpful. And I just really, I'm not too fussed about the second-round pick. I don't need to get into the weeds about our decision around that. But I just think that getting a guy who can play is probably okay for us now. Like, some people might say it's a step or two ahead, and maybe Paolo and Franz aren't even where they need to be to just have complementary pieces put around. But I don't know. I like this kid, and he seems like he's going to be able to play. For me personally, the backup 3 spot is his to lose already, in my opinion. I think it was a really great pick, from what I can tell. I say that knowing that not super familiar with the guys that went after him, like whether or not we're really wish on a guy, but no, I'm really happy with it, man.
Yeah, I feel similar. And honestly, my approach going into the draft was the same as yours. I didn't do a whole lot. I listened to a couple podcasts on it, got familiar with a few names. Like, I knew who this kid was and knew a little bit about him, but I didn't get familiar with him until after we drafted him. I watched some tape on him, got to see him play in Summer League. And it's like, man, we got a guy who's like, the chance of him busting is so low. And I would just say he's not going to be a bust. And he's going to be likely a very good quality rotation player for the Magic that, matches a lot of things the Magic need, defense or positional versatility on the defensive side and offensive side. He can shoot the ball. He's got a really high IQ. It seems like he makes really smart decisions with the ball and without the ball. I think one thing that I noticed that I really liked about him in Summer League was his movement off ball. Like, all of a sudden he'd be in the paint for one part of for one part of a player, and then he'd cut out to the 3-point line and then just grab, just nail a catch and shoot 3. And his movement off ball was just really, really nice. And he made smart passes too. And it was cool to just see him on the floor with, our other young guys, Jett Howard and Anthony Black, making an impact and really just showing dominance when they were on the floor together. Like, I didn't come out of Summer League worried about how he is going to develop. I didn't really see any question marks after that. What were some of the things, I didn't watch every Summer League game. I didn't watch the third one. I'm really making most of these conclusions after the first 2. When you watch Summer League, and we can broaden this conversation to include Jett and Anthony Black as well, just how did you feel about the young guys in that situation this year? Oh, you're muted, my brother.
So full disclosure, I didn't watch a full Summer League game this year. Like, there was just no way I was doing that. For me, it was like, I'm so hyper-focused on Jett, AAB, and Tristian Da Silva. I watched bits and pieces. I watched a condensed game, maybe the first one, I think. And then just watching highlights, reading kind of like the guys who write about this stuff quite often, and just kind of trying to get a feel if Jett's improved offensively. I think Jett, looking at him with the ball in his hands now compared to some of the stuff, I wouldn't say just G League, but I don't know. I feel like when Jett came out for 4 minutes a game in Orlando, usually those minutes are so just kind of up and back, kick out to a corner shooter, guy will get 2 feet in the paint, turn around, kick it out to a shooter. And sometimes that kind of garbage time basketball can turn into guys just trying to splash threes. So I saw what I already knew Jett could do. You know what I mean? And we know in G League he was rocking, scoring heaps of points and stuff, but he looks to have this kind of like a little bit of shiftiness and creation to him where you want to see in that second year, you need to look remarkably better than the other guys. And he kind of did. He kind of has hit that he's too good for Summer League. So for him to be in the he's too good for Summer League bit of his kind of trajectory now, it's now, are you good enough for a rotation spot on an NBA team? I don't think I could come away with it completely clued into where his defense is at, but what I really liked about Jett personally was that seemed to be a point of discussion with him, and it seemed to be a point of discussion with the other guys and the coaching staff. Like, I think there was even an interview where AB was like, oh yeah, Jett's been working on his D. Like, he's been working on it. And like, that's kind of a bit of a humility thing from Jett Howard that I really liked, that he's not uncomfortable with other players talking about it. He's open about the things he needs to work on. A fair bit of that probably comes from growing up with your father as a pro. You know what I mean? Like, some of those things, some of those kinks are already ironed out a bit, maybe perhaps with your inability to take feedback or something, because you've had a guy who's going to teach you about the ins and outs of the NBA bringing you up. But no, I really like that. AB is still a bit weird for me. Like, I'm still just like, what are you?
He only kind of played. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, the Australian men's national team's going through that right now with Dyson Daniels, who got traded to the Hawks in the offseason. Like, it's kind of like, are you a point guard or a bad shooting wing? Where is your initiation? But still, he still looked feel-wise just better, just a step above. And, he had really good games for the Magic's, Tier A squad last year. And Tristian Da Silva looked comfortable out there. I just think that they're, in a sense, all guys who are somewhat worthy of getting a shot at the rotation. When I think about my 10-man rotation for next year, AB doesn't sit in it. I would be going Suggs and Cole as our kind of ones, and I don't think AB fits anywhere else just yet without the shooting stroke. Jett is probably behind Da Silva for me, but yeah, great. You know what I mean? Like, it's a problem I'm glad we're having now, rather than last year where it was just this complete distinction of some people were really just like, oh, we picked Jett, we have to play him. And other people were like, no, he's clearly not ready. And I don't think that's not a clearer line anymore with Jett, which is cool.
It's interesting with Anthony Black. It's, I hear the front office often talk about wanting to have anyone initiate the offense. And so when I take that into consideration and I take, we had Markelle Fultz in the second unit last year doing a lot of the point guard duties. We had Cole Anthony and Joe Ingles doing a lot of that. And I think what I hope for Black to show this year is that he's just kind of solidifying himself as a secondary ball handler, right? Mm-hmm. When the ball is in his hands, he can make a good decision with it when he's in the second unit, and not necessarily like, I'm not going to hold him accountable to being a primary, because I don't know if he is going to be a primary. I don't know if he's going to develop into that. I think there's still a lot of questions about that. But can he show signs of being a positive secondary playmaker in that second unit and slow on a spot? And with his size, he can kind of play 1 through 3 to an extent, right? He doesn't necessarily have to be stuck at the 1 because he's like 6'7" or something like that. He's a pretty tall kid.
Can defend the 1 through 3 at least too, yeah.
Exactly. And his defense is what's going to get him on the floor, I think. But it's like, the offense, I want to see some more, confident playmaking when the ball is in his hands. I want to see, more movement off ball when he doesn't have it in his hands. And it'd be great to see him get a couple more shots up from 3. Because I think he averaged like just over 1 a game last year, and it'd be cool to see him get like closer to that like 3 mark per game this year. Considering, he's probably going to be second unit role when he is on the court. If he is in the rotation, like that's probably where he fits in. So, and there's going to be injuries that will get him on the floor, at times too. And so that's just kind of where I'm looking to see. But like, I think it's a battle. Like, I know we re-signed Gary Harris, and if Gary Harris defense slips, there's probably going to be enough offense on the floor to where they could go a little bit more defensive focused and bring Anthony Black in over Gary at times to handle, some of that defensive load. Gary potentially might also get injured. So it's interesting. And that's kind of like, I'm raising the bar a little bit for Anthony Black, but I'm not like, I need to see him be the point guard of the future. I don't. I just need to see that he's like a competent ball handler when the ball is in his hands. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a primary role. It has to just be like a role,
Yeah. There's almost that steadier role. Like, I think in a sense, like if we look at a point guard depth of, because they're clearly leaning into Jalen as at least an initiator, and that leans into their kind of anyone can kind of initiate kind of thing, because he's not in a sense a natural point guard, but there's success with guys of that ilk kind of running the show. Like Marcus Smart is an example, but I think Cole is someone who it's been refined, but there's an erraticness at times.
Yeah.
So AB kind of as a steadier, you know what I mean? Like he's big, he's strong, probably doesn't get pushed off his spot too much, and just being able to kind of control the pace of the game could be an important thing. And you're completely right with Gary. Like I foresee him starting at the backing up the 2 behind KCP. But yeah, you never really know. You know what I mean? Like we don't know what's going to happen in camp. We don't know what's going to happen in camp.
We don't. And there's still a long time for these guys to develop their skills between now and camp. We had a different outline kind of planned, but we're talking on the second unit. So I kind of want to shift some things around. So flow with me for a second. We lost Joe Ingles, and he was a person that really helped glue that second unit together. He was that stabilizing secondary point guard when Cole needed a second person. He helped unlock Mo Wagner to be an efficient scorer. They clearly had some chemistry together. And, they declined his option, and it came out publicly that I think Shams or someone reported it that like they both sides have strong intentions of figuring out a new deal. And I think a lot of us expected him to return, and we're kind of shocked that he left. You are someone who has followed Joe Ingles since before he was in the NBA, and his journey, to Utah, to Minnesota, now to the Magic, the first Australian Magic player to like meaningfully be on the Magic. I know there was a guy on our training camp a couple years ago. But what are your thoughts just on like how impactful Joe was last year, and what kind of thoughts around his decision, or maybe our decision not to bring him back, and how you think that's going to impact the second unit? So I asked like 3 questions in one, but Joe Ingles in a nutshell. What's up, Mr. Australian?
Man, you don't mean to be like, give me the floor, man. I'll talk Joe Ingles until the cows come home. So some of the reporting that I kind of followed and what I pieced together around the Ingles stuff was that, from what I understand, last year both Orlando and Minnesota came with contract offers, and just that what Orlando offered was just way too good to turn down.
Sure.
And obviously he talked quite publicly about loving the city, loving the organization and their support, of course, of some of the other stuff that his family manages, because obviously one of his children has autism. And Joe and his wife both work heavily in that space. They do a lot of like kind of awareness stuff around that. And that's a huge thing for him. He always says it. He goes, I won't sign anywhere unless I feel the support from the organization with the added kind of challenges me and my wife face. And I don't think him leaving means he didn't mean that. Like, I think he's very close with Jamal Mosley. A little tidbit for some people is that Jamal Mosley was pretty close to becoming an assistant coach for the Australian men's national team a few years back. And that's how Joe first met Jamal, and that's how they first talked, because he's one of the senior guys on that team. He was actually a part of the process with talking to guys. But then what I'm gathering from everything I read and put together is that this year Orlando was like minimum, and Minnesota were like minimum. And now he's maybe thinking championship. You know what I mean? Like, I think that becomes a bit of a different equation, like he has won a EuroLeague championship. He's won an Olympic bronze medal. He's got stuff that he'd be happy, as he gets older, to tell his grandkids about. But an NBA championship would also be a great little a great little add to that. And Minnesota are, in a sense, like you could pick through the flaws of their roster. They're in a sense they're a step ahead. He's played with Rudy and Mike Conley. He's friends with those guys.
Yeah.
They would probably still be looking for a bit more veteran presence. You saw the Timberwolves kind of have some mental lapses and collapses last year with their two best players being young guys. So yeah, like I get it and I appreciate it. I'm happy that everyone else, maybe who wasn't super familiar with him, got to see what he brings. And that is, shit talk, and that is like going hard. But he made other guys better. Cole talked about it. Mo talked about it.
I just want to jump in real quick before we get into on the team, because like he did join a team that with Minnesota that he is so familiar with. He played years with Mike Conley and years with, and even longer with Rudy Gobert. And it's okay. Go play with guys that were just in the Western Conference Finals, have one of the, no disrespect to Paulo, but a little bit more of an established, clear superstar with Anthony Edwards on the rise. And two of his best friends in the league while just kind of being able to be there. And, maybe coming back to Orlando where it's like, okay, yeah, we love you here. We're going to be another step team. Like hopefully hopefully they're a second round team this year, taking that next organic step. But it's also like, go play with guys my own age or closer, just like bridging that gap, or play with a bunch of 23-year-olds again. Like there's kind of like relationships that need to be considered. And then I agree. I don't think him leaving had anything negative to do with about Orlando. No. Ultimately, I think it was just like, I want to go play for my friends, and I think this team is a step better than where the Magic are at competing for a championship this year, because this could be his last year, like in the NBA. Who knows how many more seasons he's going to have, and this very well could be it, given his age at 37, his injury history, and just a little bit of the decline in his game. So I'm excited to see him land there instead of like, okay, cool. I would have loved to have seen him land here, but when you think about everywhere else he could have gone, like Minnesota, small market team, that is doing really good things, like cool, go make an impact there. But yeah, exactly. I think we're gonna miss him, and I want you to talk about that now.
Yeah, like what my hope is that like I feel like let's just say we win a championship in 3 to 5 years. Regardless of my relationship with the fact that, like, I'm really big on a lot of the Australian guys and I've followed them for a long time, he would be a guy where I would hope one day I just see a tweet just from a random Magic fan who's like, yo, shout out Joe Ingles, man. Because I feel like he came in and he kind of fortified what Jamal was doing. Jamal had the coaching staff doing this whole thing, this whole culture, this whole, like, play defense. No one's bigger than the next guy, play for each other. And he came in and I think he was able to say to these guys, like, he was on court with them, showing them. And he was able to say, like, trust me, what coach is saying works. Because he comes from the Australian national team background. He comes from, like, he's played high-level Europe, and, like, he's been a part of teams who have succeeded through those great cultures. And I think that he just helped Paolo and Franz and them mature just, like, this little touch more, whilst also, like, having a lot of fun. And he made Cole more patient. He made Mo look like a dude who could start in the NBA when, like, for a long time, he just looked at best a six man. And I just think that he had a really steadying presence on that second unit. But I'm not of the opinion that, like, oh no, we're really going to miss that. I hope he left enough of a mark, and his kind of help with other players developing can kind of now carry on. That's what my hope is.
I think the development aspect is not going to be missed to an extent, because we've brought in, and that's not a disrespect to anything he's done, because I agree, he impacted a lot of things very well. But I think, they just brought on a 2-time NBA championship who's been a starter on those teams, and Caldwell-Pope, and he might not be the same type of vocal presence as Joe, but he's someone that will have conversations with guys as they need to. Yeah. Probably but not going to be afraid to, like, step up and. I imagine he'll be vocal enough to to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be the same vocal leader like on the court necessarily as Joe was, because you could see Joe very verbally on the court making an impact with guys, talking, telling them where to go. And then like literally he was like an assistant coach on the sidelines, pulling guys to the side in timeouts, having conversations with them about what they're seeing. Like you saw it all the time. And that's where I don't know if KCP is going to fill it. Like when he's not on, like, is he going to be that sideline secondary coach? I don't know. I bet practice wise, culture wise, he's going to be awesome. But, but I don't know if we necessarily need that right now, because the whole team just got 7 games of experience in the NBA playoffs at a very high level. And that experience isn't going to go unfazed, I think that between the experience they gained there, retaining veterans or signing veterans like Caldwell-Pope and even Corey Joseph to an extent, who's played on a couple of nice teams. Not saying he's like this amazing player that's going to impact the culture, but I think they're going to mature well enough to take that next step. And I'll miss Joe because I think he was a funny dude, and I think he was the right player for last year. But I'm hoping that we're not gonna. I worry about one person. I worry about Mo Wagner in the second unit. They had chemistry, man. They had chemistry, man. Like he was able to find Mo, help him lead into the perfect cut to the basket to where he could get that dunk or that driving layup. He was able to help him get open and, get cleaner looks from three. And that's all what allowed him to become this more efficient scorer instead of like a microwave here or microwave there, where it's like, oh, you can kind of count on him to be good throughout the game and not just in like 4 minutes out of his like 12-minute stint, right?
100%, man.
And
like Mo Wagner just had these he would have that 4-minute bit and then play really bad for a few minutes. And then like last year, he just looked like a guy who had helped himself. Like he just began to understand like just little spacing things, and he looked a lot better with Joe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and especially like the second unit is going to look a little bit like it's going to have the most change out of the whole roster, because we also lost Markelle Fultz, and I think that is to clear a path for Anthony Black's development to an extent. I think it's to just get the ball in guys' hands that's going to be in the team longer. But overall, I think Markelle Fultz, we all agree, awesome teammate. A story we were all wanting to be successful because he was that bright spot, coming out of the draft as the number 1 pick, with so much potential. And then you always love a good underdog story of someone who has injuries and can kind of grow through them. And I think that's what made Jonathan Isaac's season last year so exciting. We finally got to see him play a healthy season and showcase his talent, where it's like Markelle Fultz, we kind of saw that for 1 year, but then it dipped off again. And so how are you feeling about Fultz not being retained going into the season?
I think you would remember there was a period where he was my favorite player on the Magic. Like he did stuff that 18-month period where he was healthy
was awesome.
Like a starting point guard in the NBA, in my opinion. Like the shooting was, but he was taking them. You know what I mean? And so you were kind of always hopeful they'd start coming. But that herky jerky weird style that didn't exist anywhere else and just looked like beautiful at times. You know what I mean? Like he did stuff where I was like, I'm not seeing anyone else in the league move like this. And it was never dominant, but it was always like, oh, he just keeps chipping away and is consistent. And then, we all remember when finally one day just counted up the win percentage with Markelle, and we barely ever lost without Markelle. He just was such a plus for us. I think it dropped off a bit as well as the offense, his defense. I used to think he was quite an underrated defender. He could get very skinny on screens, really hassle guys from the back when he had to navigate that. He was really good at navigating that pick and roll defense. But I think what happened, man, was there's the rumors that he was carrying a knee thing, but then the shoulder started to look whack again and he seemed flat again, and we will never know again what occurred. The idea of TOS I've read is that it will reappear. But moving on from that and just saying, like, I don't know. I hope he sticks in the league. I hope he can get healthy again, is that I'm just thankful that I felt like it was a beautiful story, and I'm glad the Magic had a part in that, because you think about, I was watching a lot of that stuff around him with the Sixers because he was on the team same time as like Ben Simmons and stuff. So I was obviously watching a lot being Australian, and I got a few really close friends who are Sixers fans. And you're watching this kid who's like whispering in interviews, and he seems shaken. And, JJ Redick's screaming at reporters in practice. And then over time in Orlando, he became so charismatic and like quite funny and quite like, charming and like kind of confident. And I was just so happy that we had an association who gave him a shot to at least find himself in that sense. And wherever he is now mentally, like I will always love Markelle because of his story. And he gave so much to the Orlando community. He really did kind of like seem really engaged when he was at those events. And I always like, whenever I'm seeing those events, I always try to watch if the players seem to really give a shit. And he did. And I just think that he's a sweet kid, and I hope he can land somewhere. He's still not signed, so I don't know what we're going health-wise, but we outgrew him as a team. That's the fact of it. We outgrew where he was at. We put ourselves in a position where we had a guard with some similar traits kind of come in, and he can't be behind Markelle Fultz right now with what AB has shown. So I just think that the long and the short of it is that our space where we exist as a team right now kind of moved on beyond what he can necessarily affect right now. So it's sad, man, but I'll always root for Markelle Fultz, man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on a lot of things you mentioned there. I was super high on him when we traded for him. I even somewhat called the trade with one of my friends, which was kind of fun. And I was super confident. I think I fell off on him a couple years ago as a player, because for 10 years I've lived in the Bay Area, and I have seen two of the greatest 3-point shooters in the planet play in my next door, and I've watched them in person, and I've seen how they've transformed the league. And so I've always relied really heavy on the three. And a couple of years ago, I just was like, I don't think he's ever going to get it back. And that's where I started like questioning his fit with the team, and like, oh man, we're just going to have so many shooters on this team. What have we never had on this team? A lot of shooters. Right. And then when you draft Franz and Paulo, and it was like, okay, we got to have shooters now. And this is just, it's not working. And I like the story, but it's like, we can't sacrifice the team for an individual who at best is a role player at this point. And so, I agree. I hope he lands on his feet. I hope he can get healthy again and play another 5 to 8 years in this NBA as a contributor and be a continued nice story for some other teams. The Magic did some other fun things, man. Their big offseason move outside of drafting Da Silva and retaining a bunch of their guys was getting Caldwell-Pope. I was super psyched on him. He's a two-time NBA championship. He won in the bubble with the Lakers as a starting shooting guard there, playing next to LeBron James. And he also won with the Nuggets 2 years ago with Jokic as a starter, for their shooting guard position as well. What during the offseason and when free agency kicked in, was he someone on your radar?
Yeah, but lower down, there was the Malik Monk stuff. I was kind of big on that. I would say it wasn't more wanting Malik Monk over KCP. It was just I didn't think KCP would leave Denver. For some reason, I wasn't counting their cap sheet. You know what I mean? I just kind of thought to myself that he would end up back there, given the vibe of the place over there at the moment. So he was kind of in this mix of there was Malik Monk. The Paul George stuff for me was look cool, but also cool if it doesn't happen, whatever. The Clay stuff I didn't want. I actively didn't want Clay, but that's the story for another time. I think that when the KCP stuff kind of became a bit more apparent, and I think someone reported it's not a done deal that he re-signs with Denver, I was like, this is a guy who, because he was the last piece added to that starting five. And I remember when they moved they shifted off from Will Barton and brought him in. I have a friend, Benny, who's a big Denver fan, and I texted him. I was like, this dude's a way better fit than Will Barton, given what you've got with MPJ, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, and Jamal Murray. This dude can defend best player of the other team or switch it with Aaron Gordon, shoot threes. Like, he was perfect. He's not quite like the get us over the line guy with our team because he's coming in next to developing players, but the way I think he'll make those guys better, and he's such a smart player, the way he's just going to add to this defensive ferociousness of our team, I love. He seems really psyched. He seems like a dude who's talking about, I'm signing here because of what I saw with Orlando when we played him. Because, you know, we beat them in some big games over the last couple of seasons. And I think that's really sick. One thing I will say is I was listening to a podcast a while ago with the guy who maybe is writing the upcoming Nikola Jokic book. And one thing that was really interesting was like him reporting that a big, like KCP is apparently like one of the main purveyors of the kind of culture there. He was the like, we eat team dinners, we go out together, we stay together, we rock together. So I think whilst he's not Joe Ingles pulling guys in the huddle and turning around and talking shit at the other team, kind of sticking up for his little brothers, I think he will have this similar effect, you know, in that kind of adding to that thing we already have. So I don't think it'll be as apparent on court, but I think that we've picked up a good piece. You know, you look at his box scores for the career, you know, and it never felt like he shot a lot in Denver, but he always hit timely shots. And it's like, you know, he might be like, look, I've never averaged more than 10 shots a game. Like, you know, I'm coming for 15. And that's cool. You know what I mean? Because what I think is going to be great is Paolo and Franz are at 1 and 2. But now I like that sometimes it felt like our games tilted on where Jalen played. And now I feel like we've got this kind of tandem of like the next guy can go get 18.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can be one of them. And then you can plug the other bits up with, you know, Mo Wagner, you know, Jonathan Isaac maybe getting a 10 and 7. So I feel like it takes a little bit of pressure off Jalen as a third scorer in a way, which he clearly understood he needed to kind of develop. So I like that. I like that it's going to be like 1, 2, and then your third can be a few different guys rather than does Jalen Suggs have a good night. And I like that. I think it's great, man. I'm really excited.
It's going to be fun because I think like you look at how Gary Harris impacted the starting unit when he was healthy last year, and he did. He was a good player. We played better with basketball with Gary Harris in the starting unit than with Markelle Fultz, and that's ultimately why Markelle Fultz got, you know, put down to the second unit. And he just kind of does everything that Gary does except better and healthier. I forget the stat exactly, but it was like since 2017 he's played 96% of his available games or something like that. Like, he's a juggernaut. He never misses time. And for a team that has constantly had injuries with our guards over the last couple of years, it'll be really nice not to have to worry about that with him as much. You know, he's roughly the same volume of three-point shooter as Gary, but I think, like you said, like Gary didn't always hit him in the clutch where Caldwell-Pope does hit him in the clutch, right? And it's, you know, he's got a little bit more movement with him off ball, which will be nice. And he's got more size, and he's, you know, Gary was a good defender, and now we have a better defender. And so that's going to be pretty sick. Like, Gary
we kind of
was
just
never
Gary
going to.
Plus. It's
we
like
do.
Gary Plus. We got
and we
Gary
still have
Harris.
Gary.
Yeah, like I love that. I love that shift in our guard rotation. It's great.
Yeah. It's going to be really cool. It's interesting you said that about him being like a glue guy kind of off the court doing team dinners and stuff, because I remember when LeBron James first joined the Lakers, they were kind of like a shit show culturally wise. And and you hear about it with like guys that have been on podcasts with him at the Lakers in those early years. And then even guys like Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye talk about it all the time, how he was a guy on those teams that LeBron would bring teams together for dinners and different events and things like that. And Caldwell-Pope was kind of, you know, this was 7-8 years ago when he first started playing with LeBron when he joined the Lakers. And I bet he got some of that from him and brought that with him to Denver. And hopefully that's what he's bringing to Orlando as well. So that'll be cool.
The smart players who want a good career, they don't win a championship. Like, he wasn't, one of the best players on that team. He was an important part of it. But, like, guys like LeBron, they then show these guys, this is how it's done, and they can go off. And, like, if someone said to me, like, are you happy to get a guy who's won a championship alongside LeBron? And I'm like, absolutely.
Yes.
Because he's seen kind of how shit is done. So, no, I think that's great, man. And I'm really excited for how our depth chart or our potential depth chart looks. I worry about losing a little bit of the fairy dust of last year. I don't want him to get complacent, especially defensively.
Sure.
But, I think just by adding actual different skill sets, we're almost covering the risk of that just by having more shooting and stuff. And, yeah.
I don't think Caldwell-Pope would let them get complacent defensively. No. He seems like that's the first thing he thinks about, and has talked about it a couple of times on interviews with the Magic and then on a podcast again. He's like, Jalen Suggs and we should be making an all defensive team together next year. And so I think that's going to be really cool. There's more roster players we could talk about, but we've been talking for 40 minutes. Anyone else you want to hit on before we move on to kind of like off-season basketball Olympics?
Not really, man. Like I know that perhaps I believe Wendell Carter Jr. is a perfectly functional center for this team. I think what he does well is stuff that actually works for Paolo and Franz. Like he's not that they don't need, I think, this like rim running kind of guy. They need a bit more of a thinking elbow corner three shooting finesse big in a way. So I think he is a big who currently suits where we're at. I know he doesn't always stay on the court. I know that it would be fair of the association to ask the question down the track, and I don't think we need to get into it too deep, but he's someone I look at right now where if I had a ball that could see into the future and he wasn't on the team when we won a championship, I wouldn't be like perplexed. Like, oh, how did we do that? Cole Anthony, I think you might have remember last year there was whispers of like some personal stuff. And he did have some really rough patches. I hope that, like, we all love Cole, man, like as a guy on the Orlando Magic, as just a guy who makes the content fun and enjoyable, and his little friendships with guys in the team. So I hope he's doing well. But no, man, I'm honestly, I'm like, obviously the Olympics is on at the moment, and like the Boomers for me are like the thing that affects my mental health the most, but the Magic are the thing that affects my mental health the second most. So I'm ready to rock once October comes.
Yeah, let's talk some off-season basketball with everything international right now. The Magic have quite they have players in the Olympics right now. They have Franz and Mo playing for Germany, and I don't know if Georgia made it or not. Is Goga?
No, Goga's not playing. No, and so there's only actually Franz and Mo, because obviously Joe is playing for Australia. He made the team, which for a second didn't look like it was going to happen because Australia is a bit more advanced than we used to be, and it's a bit harder to make the team now, even for a guy like that, a veteran. But no, obviously with Minnesota, but he's on the Australian team as well.
Franz had an interesting season last year. He definitely grew, but he was criticized a lot for his, there was some big games that he didn't necessarily like perform well in. And then like his shot was just, from distance was just scrutinized all year for a good reason. He shot horribly from distance last year. How do you think that the Olympics and this off season can help him increase improvement in those areas?
Make sure they're from deep, because the FIBA 3-point line is a touch closer. So I still want you jacking him from NBA line. So I was watching his shooting. I didn't watch any of Germany's warm-up games, but I watched their game against Japan, the opening game of the Olympics. He apparently in the warm-up games went 0-7 to start. And I think I saw some people being like, fuck, this is just maybe gone for him. And then from there, he's like not missed a shot, essentially. Like it's just been complete flip. So the thing with the German team is it's him, Mo. There's obviously Daniel Tice, Dennis Schroeder, who are big parts of it. And they've got a couple of guys based in Europe who are a big part. Andreas Obst. And I don't know how much he's kind of a part of the rotation now, but another dude, Low. But they do seem to not just go, oh, Franz is our most high-profile NBA player, give him the ball. They run their sets. There's a bit of a kind of seniority. It's a pretty team kind of thing. You can see that when Franz has the ball on Germany, they're most threatening, I think, in my opinion, because of just his craftiness of understanding that international game whilst also understanding and being good at the NBA game. So I would hope that what I would love is, like, as the games go on and they make the quarterfinals, which Germany should with the group they're in, I hope the ball's put in his hand in a lot more high-pressure situations in the big games, just to kind of get more of that under his belt. Some people might diminish international players, like not that high stakes, but they have to understand what it means to these guys and their countries. Like Franz Wagner doesn't have to hit a game 3 in a Olympic quarterfinal and think it's nothing, because he knows how many people at home are watching. It's just like NBA fans watching their team in their city, but a whole country. So I hope that there's like some high intensity kind of stuff for him to get through. I hope the threes keep hitting. He'll keep growing. He'll have physical games. He'll have high pressure situations, and you just want him to come away with I would love to see them go a fair way into the tournament. Last year, I called it early. I don't know if you guys remember, but I called it early. I was like, outside of the US, which I don't think were a medal team last year, I was like, Germany are killing. And last year, Germany seemed in a real sweet spot. Like, they're in their glory years, I reckon. And Franz will take it, but then there's a few guys that are going to retire. But I don't know how they'll go this year, but I just want him to have a good run, a lot of ball in his hand, hit some big shots, come back with that confidence, and, have a great year.
I think it's great that, unlike some of the other guys that are not playing overseas right now in Paris, he's going to be playing in high pressure games for the next month, which is really cool. And that's not something that the rest of the team is going to have. Like, Paulo is not playing in high pressure games. He's not going to continue to feel those moments that he felt. Like, the last time he felt this was in the playoffs back in May. And so, and it's going to be a while until he feels it again, where Franz and Mo are feeling it now. I think there's some, a small group of people that are like, man, I wish he was not doing this so he could just work on his shot all summer. But I also think there's plenty of time in between this. He had a month before, and he's going to have a month and a half or so afterwards to kind of work on that stuff. And it's not like he's probably not, working and tweaking some things now. But it's going to be interesting because, the Magic just gave him a max extension, and you kind of need him to figure some of this stuff out. And I was kind of flip-floppy for a second there on him, but I think that, like, ultimately him playing in this is going to be a really good thing for his long-term development. And, obviously, like, you can't hate on someone who wants to go try and win a medal for their country during the Olympics. You only get to try it every 4 years. So, unless it's COVID, then it's every 3 years. So, it'll be cool. Hopefully Mo continues to play well. Man, let's touch on Aussie. How do you think the Aussie team's going to do this year?
Man, I think that, look, gun to my head, I'm going to say that our glory run is a bit over, the kind of 16 to 21. Those years kind of led by your Bogut's, Baines, Dellies, Joes, Paddies. Jock Landale kind of came in at the tail end of that and has become a bit of a leader who plays for the Houston Rockets. And then there's an Australian-based guy who because I talk to you about Australian basketball sometimes, Chris Goulding, one of the best Australian shooters of all time. He just had a workout with the Warriors in the offseason, apparently.
Nice.
But yeah, he's like 35.
Come on over. Let's go.
No, it's not happening. But he's a big part of that. And these guys are kind of aging out. We've kind of, last year at the World Cup, we ended up really murky offense because Australia's stuck in this spot right now of all these really similar type of dudes. This Dante Exum, Dyson Daniels, Matisse Thybulle, Jack White, Xavier Cooks, Josh Green, who plays for the Mavericks and got traded to the Hornets. This kind of like somewhat limited offensively, like Dante and Josh can shoot, but really good defensively, 6'7" to 6'10" guy. We've got like all these role players. And Paddy has been kind of the offensive spark for us, and he's just a step slower. And last year, him and Josh Giddey, it was the first time Josh Giddey came to a major tournament for us. He needs the ball in his hands. I could talk about the misperception of Josh Giddey as a player forever because I think in the end in OKC, he was actually miscast, and I think it affected his game. But him and Patty needed to work it out, and then sometimes our offense got so stuck in the mud, and we went from winning a bronze in Tokyo to coming 10th at the World Cup. And Jock Lowndes was injured. He basically did his ankle the night before they flew over for the World Cup. I was at the warm-up game, which was sad. Thankfully, he hurt the ankle while I was in the bathroom. I actually missed it. And I came out, and my friend was like, yo, Jock just did his ankle. And I was like, fuck. But, yeah, man, we're in a weird spot. But it's more balanced this year. I think Jock being back really helps. Josh and Patty are playing together less. A lot of major controversy about Matisse Thybulle not making it. That could, like, the Australian public was furious, man, like furious. But I backed the decision. At the end of the day, out of all those guys I listed, he was the least offensively talented, and we didn't lose enough defensively to worry, I think, with guys like Dante and Josh. And I think just some of the selections made this year were a bit like, people were a bit perplexed over them and some of the rotation stuff. Like there's an NBL guy, Will Magnay, who's playing ahead of Duop Reith, who played for the Blazers, but he's just a better defender, better roller, better on switches. And it's after the warm-up games, man, I was a bit more positive. You know what I mean? Like we beat the shit out of China, which is fine. But then, we pushed the USA. We beat Serbia. We beat Spain the other night in the first game. Like there's still some things to plug up, but we do look better and more balanced than last year when we're kind of backing off from Patty a bit, leaning on Josh a bit. Dyson Daniels' development offensively seems a bit better. So, look, I don't think we're right now a real medal contender. I don't. We got Canada tonight, which is going to be tough as hell. And then we've got Giannis in Greece on Friday. But I don't think it's as dire as I thought. Like, I kind of was like, oh, shit. Like, it might be rough at the Olympics, but maybe not. So I'm really excited, man. Joe Ingles was apparently on the outer of not making it, which would have been massive again.
Yeah, for sure.
Of his contribution, dude.
He's been huge for that league, for that team.
I think this is like his ninth major tournament. Like when we finally won our first medal, there's the famous photo of him and Patty like hugging under the basket at the Olympic rings, and they're like best friends. So if Joe didn't make it, it would have been a real end of an era thing. Like I think that quite personally, I would have been quite emotional about Joe Ingles not making it, but it almost was like a real question of whether or not it's needed. And he only played 2 minutes the other night. So he's essentially out of the rotation, but they've gone with him being there to maybe come in as a steadier, maybe kind of like, back him up a bit with his voice. And yeah, so I'm a bit more hopeful, man. These next 2 games are going to be hard. We're just going to see how they go. Look, I know I won't touch on this too much because it's obviously not in the theme of what we're talking about, but the Australian women's team had a major upset last night. Like they lost to Nigeria, which is like they lost to the 12th best team in the world, and we're the 3rd ranked team, which is like I still can't get over it because I love our women's team too. But no, Australia's going to be good, man. But I think you want me to get to this point. This is a Team USA unlike what we've ever seen. By way of just like accolades.
Hold on though. One second.
No.
I was enjoying the Australia conversation. I brought it up for a reason. I'm deeply invested into that team. I'm not as deeply invested as you are, but like I tune in. Come on, man. We've been talking Australian basketball, and maybe not as much as recently, but there's a reason why I asked that question. It's
what do you want to know?
It's just interesting because they have a lot of NBA talent on that roster. Yeah. Like you just listed so many guys that are on it. Now, granted, some of those guys are third stringers or just had a cup of tea in the league. Other ones were established starters for many, many years. And it is kind of like, this is probably the last run for Patty Mills and Joe Ingles for an Olympic level and maybe even a world level team with this group. And it's going to be a shift in dynamic for you guys. And I am interested to see what Josh Giddey has to offer because I've never been really high on him. From the draft to his time in OKC to, just some of the drama around him off the court too. It's just like, I think it was good for him to go get a fresh start over in Chicago. I think it's a great spot for him to, nothing's great with that team, but I think it's nice that they're trying to reset and he's going to be a tool that they are resetting around. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play out because it's a lot of scrappers and Australians are tough as fuck, and it's,
and that's
they don't back down, when in the league. And so it's going to be cool to see, I wouldn't be surprised if they threw some upsets in there, right? Regardless if they're not a medal team.
Do you remember that draft pick for Houston a few years ago? The name Usman Garuba.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so him and Josh Green and Josh Giddey and them nearly got into it the other night.
Hilarious.
We are tough, but last year Brian Goorjian, our coach, he goes, I can't just take guys from the NBA now who don't play through the season. NBL guys who play will beat you guys out now because I need people who are ready and prepped. And
totally,
we do play tough, man. Just quickly on the Josh Giddey thing, man, he's a very good basketball player. There is weaknesses, but he needs the ball in his hand. He's always been an offensive initiator, and he kind of got miscast as this wing. I will just touch on some of the off-court stuff.
We don't have to. It's okay.
I will just say this. It's on pretty good word throughout Australian basketball and people who would know that what people think happened isn't what happened. And the OKC know that, and that's why they backed him, and that's why the NBA backed him.
Yeah, it didn't really turn into anything major.
The internet has run away with it, and he'll never recover from that, sadly. He'll never recover from that. I will text you offline about some stuff that, but he'll never recover from that. And it's frustrating, but he's from a legendary Australian basketball family. His dad played in the NBL when I was a kid, but he's the future on the Australian team. Man, he puts in good performances at the World Cup last year. He won Young Player of the Tournament award. But we do have this tricky spot of we've got all these NBA role players, but Dyson Daniels has been really good, man, and he was essentially picked over Matisse. He's looking more comfortable offensively, and I'm curious as to how 2027 and 2028 look. My brain is already kind of forecasting what the team might look like because I know some of the people coming up, some of the younger guys.
Yeah.
But man, I'm excited. I'm excited for tonight. Canada will be a fun game. I support that team because I lived over there, so totally. I'm excited for them too.
And they're a good team too. It's going to be they're a tough team. They might be the second or third best team in the Olympics right now. So, Luke, do I got 5 more minutes with you?
Absolutely, mate.
Cool. Let's touch on U.S. basketball team, the team that Paulo should have been on.
No, Italy, dude.
Italy. Yeah, I guess he should have played for Italy, but they said, no way. You didn't play for us last year, so you ain't playing again. What? And granted, I don't think he would have been allowed to play for them last year. But he'll be on
once you play a senior game, it's a whole process to try.
He'll be on the team. He'll be on the U.S. team in 4 years, so it's not a big deal.
For sure.
This team is stacked, man. It's got I heard it on a podcast and I've been running with it since. The second best team in the Olympics is the USA bench. Is the USA second unit team, right? That's the second best team in the league. And it's insane. And the guy who just keeps getting older and older continues to just be establishing himself as the man with LeBron James and just running it. And KD, who had a up and down season last year, just is Team USA. I think he just took over as all-time Olympic leading scorer for the U.S. team ever.
Yeah, I think he might have taken
the other
Carmelo.
night. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. It's an insane roster, man. And
man.
You got guys Jason Tatum not getting in the rotation last night, and Jason Tatum's a top 10 player in the league right now, and it's wild. It's wild how stacked this team is. They had some troubles in warmups here and there. Joel Embiid looked pretty bad at moments. There was times where it was should we start Anthony Davis over Embiid? But I don't think that was going to ever be a thing because I think the only reason Joel Embiid decided to play for America is if he had a starting spot. So, give me your thoughts on Team USA.
Just on the Embiid stuff, I think the trying to get 50% of your points by flopping all the time isn't going to work in international basketball.
That hurts,
because those refs are far less forgiving. This USA team, man, my opinion is this is the best USA team of all time. This is better than the Dream Team. The Dream Team had guys who we will understand to be some of the greatest of all time, but so does this team. And these are dudes, like, that team was still a lot older. And at the end of the day, like, not one of the teams that the Dream Team played would qualify for the Olympics now. Like, that's how far international basketball has come. Like, the other teams are so much better and have so much more, like, kind of high-end EuroLeague talent or top-end EuroLeague talent and NBA players, guys playing in Australia and stuff. Like, I think it is a completely different ballpark in the competition the USA has to face. But when they can send their top line tier A team, for me, it's still a foregone conclusion. But what that means, like, what I think has happened is it hasn't meant that, like, USA is now no longer a guarantee to win. I ultimately think they are, but the window of, like, the room for error is smaller. You know what I mean? So they can't send their second, third, or fourth teams anymore and think they're going to win, where they used to be able to do that.
Yeah,
now
for sure.
They kind of have to be like the big dogs, because even if you look at last year's team, like, it had the defensive player of the year, it had the rookie of the year, it had guys who made 13 All NBA, it had all stars. It wasn't like last year. I got kind of annoyed because people acted like they sent fucking Peyton Pritchard and the boys. Like, seriously, people were like, "Oh, but it's this
low
USA
blow
team."
there
Like,
on Peyton Pritchard, but I mean, come on,
like, you know, good player, but people acted like the USA team was like fucking you and our friend Jonathan being, dude. Like,
hey,
it was still a good basketball team, but that room for error now is like they can't have that anymore. So I think this team will win gold. I think that this team at the tail end of the tournament, you know, they might have a 3/4, a half here where it's like, you know, even you saw the other night that basically the minutes that Jokic were on, they were square. But it was just those 9 minutes they were off, they fucking blew them out of the water. Like, so for me, it's like they'll get tested. But this team, I just think that, like, anything but gold for this team is like a disaster. Like, and it won't happen. But that's kind of where I think it's at, man. I think international players improve so much that Team USA used to be able to send the third team and win. They can't send the third team anymore. That's what I think it is. And they kind of need to get a bit more top-line talent. And, you know, I think it's, really interesting that LeBron is kind of the guy. Like, I love that. I have this little exercise I do where I'm a bit of a nerd, where I'll make, like, the fake Team USA depth chart for each Olympics out of what the all NBA teams were that year. So you kind of work out a depth chart out of the top 12 vote getters. And each year it's kind of like, 7 of those guys ended up on the team with World Cup, sometimes less. I did it this year. It's 10 of the exact 12 dudes that come up when you run that little exercise.
That's wild.
It's just the best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's sick. Like, it's going to be dope. I hope we see some competitive games. I think they play South Sudan next, who are another team for me that are important because of my work in the South Sudanese community over here with basketball. Plus, a lot of those guys are dudes who grew up in Australia because they fled here from the war. So South Sudan actually has like 4 guys who play in the NBL. It's just cool. It's just cool they actually like got a team like this together, and might not happen again for a while, but it's dope.
How crazy at that this is Steph Curry's first Olympics and he's like 35.
Yeah.
You know,
he played that one World Cup, I think in 2014 he played
like
the World Cup. Yeah.
And that was it. You know, last year he didn't do it because of the COVID stuff. I think there was another year there was like injuries. And then I think earlier in his career, there were just guys better than him. And so it's just, you know, like there's Kobe's and stuff like that. And so it's, it's just wild, man. And I'm happy that he's going to get to, you know, have this accomplishment on his resume too, you know, LeBron to get another medal, and just this squad is just insane, you know. I want to see I want to see them challenge though. Like, I want to see how they face versus Canada if they get to play them. I want to see how they face versus, you know, Greece and some of these other really challenging teams. France would be a cool one to see how they play up. France is going to be is a good team still.
I want to see that France matchup. I want to see that in
Who do you think's the second best? I want to see that France matchup too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I apologize. Who do you think is the second best team in the Olympics? Like, give me the top 3 if you had to guess the podiums.
It's interesting because, like, some people have been like, oh, Canada will compete with them. But I think what people are mistaking is that, like, Canada's very top-end talent is, like, SGA and Jamal Murray. That's dudes who can hang with these guys.
Yeah.
And then, it's RJ Barrett, Dylan Brooks. Like, they're deeper, probably top-end talent-wise than any other team, but I still think the USA is obviously going to kill them, I think. But I got to say, man, like, France, Germany on their day because they're so well drilled. Like, I think France, Germany, I don't think the Serbia team has it this year. Like, something appears to be off a bit. Spain used to be, but, they're in a younger state right now, and a lot of their dudes are – they're Rudy Fernandez, they're Sergio Llull, like they're old, man, and they're done.
Yeah.
And so I think it's tricky, man. Like, I think it could come down to a gold medal match with Germany, France, or Canada. But I think they beat all of those teams. But Germany, France, and Canada are the other teams where I'm kind of thinking like, probably medal contenders.
Yeah.
I don't think Australia's a medal contender this year, but I also am a bit more optimistic than I was at the start of the tournament. So, yeah, man, like, it's just cool. I'm excited for that end of the tournament. If we are there, I'll be excited. But stuff's kind of changed now, man. Like, none of these other teams are scared of these guys because they've got so many teams who play against them now.
Yeah,
totally. Team USA used to play teams and people would get their shoes signed by the players, and now no one cares. They're ready to go. So that's what's cool about it, man. And I'll text you, like, updates. Like, I'll text you tonight after the Canada game if you want. And, yeah.
Absolutely. Dude, I'll take a text from you any day. Man, it's going to be fun. Luke, we've been talking way longer than we thought we were going to talk, and I really appreciate that. We hit on so much stuff, and I can't wait to publish this episode in a couple of days. Dude, thank you for coming on the show. You're not on social media, so I don't have to ask you to plug anything.
Nah, man, but I'll be back.
Coach Luke Smith, VP of Helping Hoops, coach of the Victoria, a coach in the Junior Victoria Basketball League.
That's it.
And dude, one of my closest friends for a very long time. So thanks for joining us, Magic fans. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Let's go Magic. Peace.
All right, my boy. See you, man.